and good evening. My name is Emmanuel Ayiku, and today I'm giving a presentation about the article that I decided to review, focusing on individuals and group commitment to change. So the article that I decided to review was titled Beyond Change Management, a multi-level investigation of contextual and personal influences on employees and commitment and their commitment to change. And it was by David Hurld, um, Donald Fedor, and Stephen Cadwell. So there were a few objectives that I identified from the research, from the article. One of these in objectives being examining the impact of attitude towards change within groups and individuals in organization. And I felt like this was something that the author was trying to have the readers get engaged of, is the fact that when we're looking at change within an organization, so many a times we're focused on how are we going to implement the change, how are we going to announce the change, the external pros and cons of this change. But something that we sometimes neglect to observe as leaders is the attitudes of the people that we are leading within the organization. So that is something, one of the objectives that the researcher wanted for us to examine is examining the impact of attitude towards the change. So how do people receive it? How do they feel about it? And things like that, because they believe that in the literature, as they were reading and as they were researching, they realized that there was not a lot that talked about people's emotions and how employees received, changed, and things of that nature. The second objective was a desire to study a broad knowledge of how organizations operate when it does come to change. And I felt like this was something that is very good because at the end of the day, we're so sometimes focused, just as I said before, on the things that are external and also the internal changes that are taking place and how it's affecting the organization. But we do not look at individual attitudes within that. So the basic research question that the article was determined to discover was how does change affect employees' attitude in an organization, whether it be internally or externally as well. So there were a few theoretical frameworks. The first one is that change research focuses on the nature of change and how changes are implemented within the organization. So the foundation of it is like, yes, when we're looking at change within an organization, we focus on how it's implemented within the organization. So that was the foundation in which he built his literature review on. So, according to literature, there are two reasons why change efforts fail. And these two reasons are reasons that I feel like are important. One of those reasons that he brought up was that first, organizations don't apply what they know about change management. So, even though we have this information about how to bring change within an organization and things like that. Something that they found was that organizations are not using the knowledge that is out there concerning change. The second reason why change efforts fail is because change management practices focuses on just changes that are taking place and forget another important factors that affects people attitudes to change. So yes, we are focused on changes that are taking place, but we tend to sometimes forget people's attitudes and how people are receiving the change that we present before them. The third theoretical framework was that sometimes the demand and change circumstance may surpass the resources that an organization needs in order to meet the demands of the change that is being implemented. And I think that as leaders, even after reading this, I remember when I was interning at a retention office, I was sitting down with with my supervisor, and she basically told me exactly what she wanted from me. And at the end, she asked me something that I even to this day, I always remember. And she said that, do you feel like I've given you the resources in order for you to accomplish what I'm asking you to do? And I've never in my entire life had a supervisor ask me that until this summer. And her just basically asking me that helped me to help me to really reflect and see like, hey, at this moment I may not be able to have everything. I'm not sure, but at this moment I feel like you have prepared me for success. So as leaders, we have to ask ourselves, are we giving the people that we're leading the tools that they need in order for them to be successful? So the methodology, how did they go about collecting data? So they used different surveys were distributed to the organization. The surveys was tailored to each based on changes that people within the organization can relate to. So they reached out to, let's say, the HR person in the organization, ask them what are some changes that your organization has went through, so that they can find a common change that everyone within that organization has gone through, and by so doing they were able to create survey questions that people within this defined group of people can relate to. So the participants were then given 2 weeks to complete the personalized web-based survey, and they received about 97.4% completion. Afterwards, half of the respondents within an org. So basically, how it works was that, so when you're looking within the organization, half of the people, let's say we have an organization of 200 people who want to be participants, 100 of them will be given a group level data survey, which is basically talking about how do you feel like this change affect your organization and people within your organization as a whole. The rest of the 100 people were given individualized survey, which was basically examining their individual actions and attitudes towards the change that was taking place. So basically asking them, how did you feel about this change and how did it impact you as a whole? So there were two common themes that they found out in this research. The first one is that individuals' commitment to change depends on whether or not they believe that implementing this change will be a success or a failure. So that's something that they realize is that one of the attitudes is that do we believe that this change, is it going to be successful or is it going to be a failure? And that led to the second finding, which was the momentum. If this is going to be successful, then the momentum is great. But if this change is not going to be successful, it also had an effect on the momentum. And I think that as leaders, even while I was reading the article, thinking like even now at this moment, we have to be able to give people that space in order for them to ask the questions that they need in order for them to be comfortable, but giving them that security and assurance if it's within, if we are sure about it, how successful or the failure that may take place in this process. So this is my reference page. But overall, the research was extremely great. Definitely learned a lot from it, and I think that the biggest thing that I definitely took away from this is that constantly as a leader thinking about not just like, hey, realizing that when I am standing there and I'm telling the people that I'm leading, this is what is taking place. I'm realizing that there's some people that are looking at it as how does this affect us as a group, but a large majority will be looking individually. How does this affect me? How does this affect my family? How does this affect my day-to-day responsibility? And being prepared as a leader in order to ask those questions, but giving them room as well in order for them to feel comfortable to ask those. So thank you so much for this project, this assignment, and I hope you have a blessed day. Bye-bye.